Namaskar. Welcome to an episode on Editorial with me on HW News. Let's talk about what we call getting noticed by the government and then getting a notice thereafter. There was a time you'll recall, not really too many years ago, when your daily financial and other transactions hardly left a footprint or a trail, and thus a post facto or a post event or a post mortem traceability of transactions was very difficult. We generally operated in isolation, quite unnoticed by the government, particularly on what we call on a concurrent and on a real-time basis. Tax evaders and violators could thus indulge in and perpetrate illegal transactions, very confident that they would remain hidden and that the violations would go undetected. Those were the days when there was a GIR number issued by the Income Tax Department for administration and identification purposes. There was no PAN, there was no Aadhaar, there was no digitization, and transaction documents and compliances were largely manual, making it very difficult for government departments to share data and cross-tally, cross-verify across various departments. There were no databases as such, and thus there was no concept of real-time sharing or connectivity of data between various wings of the government. KYC was not there, and all that was given at times was a mere proof of identity by way of a photo ID like a driving license or sometimes a passport copy. A person could easily open a bank account, conduct illegal transactions, and close the account and disappear or vanish. And that was also the case with imports, exports, etc. There was no top-level agency like the FIU, the Financial Intelligence Unit at Delhi, to mandate and monitor compliances and norms like KYC, gathering of data and documents, and report suspicious transactions to various agencies and departments of the government. In other words, things went unnoticed, they went unreported. But now with the technologies of internet, artificial intelligence, social media, digitization, etc., almost all our transactions get captured and they are reported and noticed on a daily basis. When you particularly submit your Aadhaar and PAN card details to transact, your activity has been captured and reported under the comprehensive reporting guidelines that are implemented and pretty intensely implemented in India. It invariably lands up in the database of a government department or authority, and it is subject to data verification, mining, and analytics in order to look out for any unusual pattern or violation of any law in the reported transaction, which would thereafter need any further investigation. Thus, capturing of data takes place instantly. It goes into a government database instantly, and even the data mining and analytics also happens in an online manner. In other words, your transaction leaves a trail and you are always noticed by the system for further verification and further scrutiny if need be. If any red flag is raised in the data, you can be sure further scrutiny is going to take place. For example, whenever you do a banking transaction or whenever you use a credit card, debit card, ATM card or any other card, or you do a digital payment, or when you indulge in any kind of an import-export activity, or you send money abroad or receive funds from abroad, or you buy or sell any immovable property, or you buy or sell any mutual fund units, shares or security, or if you borrow money, or if you buy a car, etc., the transaction is recorded, it is reported, and the system has noticed you for sure. Nothing goes unnoticed today, unlike what it used to be in earlier years. This is because of technology enabling the government to do so. The details and profile of everything that you do lands in the database of the government somewhere or the other, and thereafter, it does not gather dust. The transaction that has been captured does not go unnoticed. It is immediately looked into. The coordination between various government departments, etc., is so strong and concurrent and a real-time basis today that the captured data is shared instantly and online between all of them. For example, GST shares its data with the income tax department and vice versa, and both of them cross-verify whether the details are matching or not in order to identify any possible tax evasion. That also happens with data which is shared by banks, Reserve Bank, BSE, NSE, mutual funds, etc. Every department picks up data relevant to it and acts upon it as empowered by the law. Suspicious and unusual transactions in particular are identified, investigated and punished if need be. That is what happens after every transaction that is incurred by you. You may think it's just something routine, but even for the government databases, it's a routine analysis and routine verification of the data to see whether there is any kind of a hidden violation in it. This situation of being noticed, observed, recorded and reported has been technology enabled, and India has been a forerunner worldwide in the matter of gathering information about almost everything that we do or transact. The highest number of digital payments in the world today take place in India. It truly began with the Aadhaar number and the IT PAN, which identified and marked each of us. And common sense says that whenever and wherever you are required to submit your Aadhaar number and PAN number, as a general rule, it means that the transaction has been reported, and in case there is something unusual in it or it violates any law, then the government department concerned will promptly send you a system-generated notice. That is our present journey from being noticed to getting a notice. This gathering of information sounds scary and it almost seems like an authoritarian state. But that's the mode of governance for us all, which some of us also call it as profiling. The chances of misuse of such data reported and captured is certainly not ruled out, and it would be taking place. The bottom line is, every activity of yours, if material and meaningful, then it has left a trail, it has left a trace, it has left a certain amount of information for the government to now act upon. For most of us, oblivious of the obvious recording and reporting of data, it is only when you get a notice after having executed a transaction that you realize that you are under observation, you are under surveillance, and that you are being noticed. So far, so okay. But then panic, anxiety, and harassment starts when such notices are received from government departments. These are mostly system-generated notices, and despite all the sophistication and information matching at the availability of the government, despite data mining and data analytics conducted on that particular information, yet unwarranted notices do get issued most of the time. And they certainly cause immense harassment and colossal waste of time and money for all those who get such unwarranted notices. The fact that such notices are often worded in accusatory and intimidatory language with the threat of a penalty and prosecution does not help at all, and very understandably, a sense of panic does set in. These notices that are received by all of us cannot be taken lightly, and they cause immense distraction to the individual and of course to the entrepreneur who gets it. And as time goes by, more and more such instances of notices being received is becoming the norm of the day. The general outcome, whenever such notices are received, is of three types. The first thing that happens is that if the violation was not intentional and if it was minor, instead of its immediate condonation and dropping by the very system that issued it, the system-generated penalty is levied mostly on a per-day basis or on a minimum levy basis, causing a major financial loss to those who got such notices. Your violation may have been unintentional. You never knew that you did it. It may have been very minor, but yet very often penalties are levied. With the system giving you little human interface, you are unable to even explain your bona fides, innocence and lack of any intention. And if there is a human interface, it often entails bribes and corruption before the matter gets resolved. So the first thing that happens is that even if your violation was unintentional, even if it was minor, as we said, you perhaps never knew that you had committed any violation. Yet, most of the times, some form of punishment, some form of penalty does take place. The second is that when it comes to intentional and deliberate contraventions, where the violator was hoping to cheat the system and avoid the law, The punishment by way of penalty and prosecution is heavy, and it should be so according to us. This capturing of data is actually meant to identify and punish these deliberate wrongdoers who often devise very sophisticated schemes even now, hoping to cheat the system and make a fast buck out of it. The third is that the closure of proceedings under these notices generally does not take place in a time-bound manner, which causes enormous and lingering stress and anxiety to all those who have got these system-generated notices. The fact is that these notices, which are sent for small and unintentional violations and lapses, and the voluminous submissions and penalty that they subsequently entail, they are a huge impediment to the ease of doing business in India. They increase the cost of doing business in India, and they also increase the cost of living in India. And the worst hit when these kind of notices come are sadly the struggling MSME and informal units in India. They are the worst hit when these kind of notices come. They perhaps often don't even have the money in order to engage consultants and look after the compliances. The fact is that all of our transactions today get noticed. Some of them result in notices, a minuscule of which only are deliberate violations which need to be punished with a heavy hand. In its pursuit of tax evaders and law violators, the system is bound to issue notices on suspicion, but it needs to ensure that no hardship, no harassment is caused to the innocent ones, which is not happening today. The system issues notices to all of us, but the fact is that it should not harass all of us. The other reality, of course, is that as technology gets more and more sophisticated, the intensity of getting notice and receiving notices only going up. The government needs to ensure that the system, by virtue of its sophistication and availability of data, reduces the number of notices that are being generated and issued, because otherwise there is a sense of harassment, there is a sense of fear, there is a sense that you are now going to be facing the rigors of law which are not warranted. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off. Till we meet again. Namaskar.